Wuthering Waves has achieved what many thought impossible, but to phrase it differently, it has accomplished something quite challenging with the release of version 2.0. You might wonder what exactly did Wuthering Waves accomplish in this update. It is re-establishing itself as a high-quality game that appeals to a wide audience. Hey everyone, Sayram here. To clarify, Wuthering Waves was indeed an enjoyable game prior to version 2.0. But that view was not universally shared, especially among many players before this update. So what led to this perception? Let's take a step back to the time before Wuthering Waves was launched. When it was first announced, it generated a lot of excitement and was referred to in the gacha community with the classic phrase, the Genshin killer. A phrase that is repetitive and overused. I've heard that more than I don't know. But anyways, it drew more attention to the game, particularly given Genshin's massive popularity. A ton of content creators were making content about Wuthering Waves, hyping it up. Plus the developers were sponsoring a lot of content creators to make content about the game, which made even more people know about the game. But at the same time, that wasn't the case for everybody in being hyped for the release of the game. When many saw that it was constantly referred to as the Genshin killer, they got a negative impression of the game, thinking it's a game whose main purpose is to overshadow other games of the same type, and not be an independent game that wants to coexist with the others, which once again made them get a negative impression of the game no matter what happens. It definitely isn't the developers referring to it as a Genshin killer, but the content creators who obviously do that to get views. But you can't really blame the content creators, since it's their job to get views and make content. But anyways, when the first closed beta for Wuthering Waves was released, it was decent but did not meet the high expectations some had set. There were performance issues and certain gameplay elements were lacking, such as a sense of life in the open world. However, since it was still in beta, it was premature to judge the game too harshly at that stage. Many players provided feedback on desired features and improvements, and as anticipated, a number of these suggestions were incorporated into the second closed beta. While it still wasn't flawless, it made the game appear significantly more promising than before. At that time, Wuthering Waves set a pre-registration goal of 30 million players, which was surpassed with an impressive number of pre-registrations of over 30 million. With such a large player base and the enticing free rewards promised at launch, one would expect the release of Wuthering Waves to be met with great enthusiasm and positive reviews, right? However, this was not entirely the case. The launch was marred by performance issues, bugs and crashes, rendering the game unplayable for many. Additionally, some players were dissatisfied with the story, feeling it overwhelmed them with information right from the start, and criticized the weak English voice acting. As a result, many players formed a negative impression of Wuthering Waves during its launch week, believing it failed to deliver a satisfying gameplay experience. A lot started to spread hate towards the game with negative comments like it's supposed to be the Genshin killer, but the game only killed itself. The game being received like that by the community was definitely a negative, since it made a lot get the expectation of it being the perfect game for it to do its job that the content creators and part of the community assigned it to do. Constant comparison and negativity definitely impacts negatively in making a game enjoyable to play. It's like you telling your parents you got a 95% in your exam, but then they tell you your cousin who's the same age as you graduated 2 years earlier than they're supposed to, which is no fun at all. But nevertheless, not all hope was lost. Many players who continued to engage with the game provided ongoing feedback to the developers regarding potential improvements. The developers responded promptly, making enhancements to the game's quality based on the player's input, with a lot of compensation rewards. This included features that improved the gameplay, such as the ability to complete daily tasks with just 2 runs in tasset fields, and the addition of a skip button. Although these incremental improvements were significant, they did not completely restore the initial excitement that surrounded the game at launch. Furthermore, at the same time, a lot were talking about how the game revenue is low, and the popularity of the game isn't very high. It was definitely a rough time for the game state. It seems like the game had more haters than fans, but nevertheless, everything changed with the announcement of Wuthering Waves version 2.0. With heavy and strong marketing, a lot of players heard about it and bought into the hype. Plus, for many players, this update represented the last chance for the game. The cumulative improvements made by the developers had a substantial positive impact on the launch of version 2.0, which did not disappoint players unlike the original launch. Enhancement included a better storytelling experience, improved English voice acting, which was bad during the launch, enhanced game performance, and various quality of life features which were missing during the launch, enriching the overall gameplay experience. If you were to bring a player who had only experienced the game at launch and let them dive straight into Rinascita, they would notice a stark contrast in quality, which all happened thanks to the players who didn't lose hope in the game and continued supporting it amidst the hate and negative opinions many had about the game. Moreover, the game's release on the PlayStation 5 platform opened the doors for even more players to experience it who didn't witness the launch week and went into the game with a neutral opinion. The positive effects of version 2.0 on Wuthering Waves are evident in the analytics, showing that the game has reached unprecedented popularity for itself, along with the record-breaking banner sales for itself. It is clear that the developers are doing an outstanding job of redeeming their game in the eyes of the public. Wuthering Waves is finally beginning to discover its identity and direction for the future. On top of that, the amount of content regarding Wuthering Waves is flourishing. To sum up, that is exactly what happens when you take close care of your game and pay attention to what your players want. It isn't absolute perfection, but definitely a step in the right direction in contrast to the launch of the game. If you've enjoyed, please do leave a like and a sub, and as always, I hope to see you soon.